Hello and welcome! Today I'm going to be using charcoal in my sketchbook, and some of the materials that I'm going to be using is this Tombow Mono eraser, this very specific color of Ohuhu alcohol marker. I don't know why I'm holding it like this, it just seems to be appropriate. And also a well-used kneaded eraser. So I started my charcoal journey just the other day, and this is what I created, and it was so much more fun and addicting than I ever thought was possible. So I am continuing on that addiction today with another charcoal drawing. So sit back, relax, and let's draw this really cute bulldog together. This time I'm starting out with a background color, and I think I have high hopes for how it's going to turn out at this point. So what I'm doing right now is I'm pretty much doing my rough sketch with my marker. There are some pros and cons to this, and we'll talk about that as we get there. All I'm worrying about at this moment is getting the marker down on the page. I don't care at all if there are marker strokes showing because we're covering it up with charcoal anyway, and I think that the strokes might add some character once all the charcoal is on the page. So there's 3 different hardnesses to charcoal that all have different purposes. There's hard, medium, and soft. There's probably more, but that's what I have right now, and that's what I'm learning off of. So hard, I have learned, is great for details, not great for spreading. Soft is great for spreading and getting really dark colors. And medium is pretty much the best of both worlds if you don't really have any idea what you're doing, which is what I end up using most of the time here. So I'm starting at the top of my drawing here because you kind of have to work top down with charcoal, otherwise you'd be smudging up whatever you just drew if you started at the bottom. And also we have pretty much our base sketch done, so I know where everything is going to go. I don't really have to go and do any more mapping because we already did that. So ultimately my plan for this drawing, or I guess my vision for this drawing, is just to keep it really rough. I want, rough because he's a dog. Anyway, so I want to keep some aspects really lifelike, like his eyes and his nose, and then the other parts I kind of want to keep them really loose and not overwork them. I have to take a second and make sure that my eyes are matching with my nose and that the lines are parallel to each other to make sure that when I'm done with my drawing, it won't look wonky in the end. The way that I'm going about this drawing is I am adding in values more than I am details. So I'm really just looking on like darkness versus lightness. So all I'm doing is adding in the really dark spots with my pencil and then relying on my blender to blend it out to a lighter value until it's eventually white. Another cool thing that you can do with the blender is to just use the charcoal that's already on your blender and use that on your paper straight. If you just want like a really soft gray color, don't add any pencil at all and just use the blender to get that gray color on there. Super cool. I actually think that I'm using my blender to not the full capacity. I didn't realize until after I drew this picture and I'm now doing the voiceover that you can probably use the blender on its side or like on its diagonal to get that full blending capacity. I only use the tip and I think that it's good for not knowing what you're doing, but also I think it would have been really helpful to be able to blend more than just the tip. So I mentioned before that there were pros and cons to doing marker as the sketch. The reason why I did marker first was because I know that you can't add marker on top of charcoal, so marker had to be first. I think marker did a good job as the base layer for like the big blocks of color, but there are 2 spots where it didn't make sense for me to use marker as the sketch, and that's for the mouth and the jaw and the chest. I think a better option that I should have used and that I will use going forward is doing the blocks of color with marker, but then switching to charcoal for the outlines of the other areas that weren't supposed to have color. those spots were white on the dog, and I was kind of putting that problem onto future Hannah and letting future Hannah decide how to problem solve her way out of that. That is something that I kind of enjoy doing, is figuring out how to make something terrible look better. But in this case, I think that I would do it differently in the future. Now, when I was doing the block of color underneath it, I was not really worrying so much about staying within the boundaries of where the outline of the dog would be, and that was on purpose. I was trying to stay a little bit more abstract with it. I don't know, I see a lot of watercolor artists do it, and I really like how loose it makes the art look. So I was kind of going for that here, and I thought that maybe if I did the lips and the chest like that, then it might help it look loose, and if it didn't, then I could problem solve my way out of it. It's one of those things where you live, you learn, you try something new, and if it doesn't work out, you learn from it and do it in a way that you might like better the next time. Adding in these folds to this Bulldog, this is why I chose this Bulldog, was for these folds specifically. I knew that getting the creases with this charcoal was going to be so satisfying, so I'm really excited that we're finally at the body. Now, the face was really fun to do, but getting to this body I am so excited about. One thing that I paid attention to was adding the smudge tool to only one side of the line for these folds. So I intentionally added the folds really thick so that one side was a harsh line, and then the other side I blended down into the fold below it. And that adds a rounding effect that was pretty cool. Looking back on this, I thought that I was doing that with every fold, but I think that I was only doing it for some of the folds. So if you notice the chest, it looks really messy, and I have it in the back of my head to think of a way to fix it, and really the only way that I can think of is to add a background really dark and try to squeeze it in tight to cover up that line. Now, I do have a problem with that, and it's that the paper got scratched by the pencil, and I can't bring the charcoal up. The paper just won't accept it. So you'll notice it in the future when I do my background. It's just another one of those things that is an oopsie, and we learn from it. I decided that the best way to hide this line is to just cover it up dark with graphite and then blend it into the brown and hopefully make it look a little bit more like the dog is supposed to be colored that way. And it does help a little bit. And then I go in with the hard charcoal pencil and deepen up some of these folds to just make them look like they're really going in deep into the face. And somehow I didn't add anything into this ear. It got completely lost, completely forgotten about. I decide to add white colored pencil into where highlights might be on these wrinkles. It doesn't look like highlights, and that's not really what I was going for, but it adds just a touch of some character that adds a lot to the piece. And I think I love how it turns out. I add some more on his back folds too, and so much character is added. When I did my full block of color at the beginning, remember how I didn't really care if the marker strokes showed through? This back is why. I love how it's not even, it's textured without kind of meaning to be textured. And then adding that white colored pencil on top of it just added just the perfect touch of character and uniqueness. And how many times can we say character? I tried adding a little bit of pink to this tongue, and you can't really see it. And then I add in a dark background for this dog for two reasons. The first reason is because the other page had the background just like this, and I kind of wanted it to match in that sense. This is how I was tying it together, I guess. Now this is where if I didn't use only the tip, it would have gone a lot faster. I end up using my finger and smudging it a little bit better. Oh, but the second reason why I decided to do this background was to hide the chest and the gross lines that happened. But I decide at this point that the tongue needs to be pink. I have no reasons, just that I want it to be pink. So I erase all of the charcoal and it comes off really easily. And then I add marker and then I go back and add charcoal in on top of it. And I chose a pink that would be really muted on purpose so that the main color would be that brown. And this pink was just kind of like an accent, and I love how it turns out. Now I started to feel like that harsh black thick line around the dog was a little bit too harsh for how happy he was and how soft he looked. So I decided to add in a little bit more black in the background to soften it up. And I finally got this thing in the mail. I wasn't expecting it, but it came right as I was finishing. So I'm using a new smudging tool and I wish I had this the entire time. It's amazing. It's basically like a makeup brush. And yeah, I have way too much fun, so I just kind of add it in spots that I think might use it, might need it. Now I'm cleaning up the edges, trying to make them crisp white. I think adding washi tape in the beginning would have been a good idea. It's something that I'll need to plan out ahead of time, but I'm not a good planner. Oh, this spot was really bugging me too. Now this is where the color ended on the dog to begin with, so that's why I stopped that color there. But it didn't look right, so I just added, he has brown there now. I add a little bit more white gel pen to the eyes to try to make them pop just a little bit more, make them stand out and not look at all gray. And then I add some white touches to the nose to make it look a little bit wet. But then it looked a little too wet, so I smudged that to look a little less crisp. So that's the finishing touch, and this dog is done. I love how he turned out. I hope that you learned something and that this was helpful for you. And thanks for sticking around, and I will see you next time.